Good afternoon, and welcome to Avitar Face to Face. My name is Jewel Kinch-Thomas, and I'm here sitting in for your regular host, Dillard Boone. Dillard will be out for some weeks dealing with a medical situation, and we wish him well. But I will be here to continue to bring to you the arts and culture of Westchester and beyond. And today we have a very special guest. We have a guest who is blazing trails in New Rochelle in arts and culture, and we want to welcome to the show Eric Woodland.
Thank you.
Eric, so nice to have you here.
Thank you, Jewel, and thank you, Dillard. Appreciate it.
Okay. So, Eric, we want to talk about all of the wonderful things that you're doing in New Rochelle these days. But before we do that, I'd like you to talk a little bit about your background. Can you tell us a little bit about where you came from before you decided that arts were the thing?
Oh, well, I've changed my face like 20 times over the last 15 years, but I was corporate at Kraft Foods and corporate at Cadbury, and I was region manager, so managed the East Coast for some sales and the West Coast for other sales. And after switching around corporately, you get into a lull in your cube. And in that cube, I started studying theater production in the city. I started studying television. I started studying event marketing, and the cube started strangling me.
So the creative spirit needed to be released, in other words.
It did. It did. And on the weekends, I wouldn't have conflict of interest during the week, but on the weekends, I'm in the city producing theater or, producing a concert or learning more about jazz. So I filled the weekend time with my passion.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then at some point, you decided that that passion needed to take the full force, the full schedule.
Yeah.
What was the trigger for that?
The trigger? Well, the recession. So, I mean, there's a couple of things, but I saw the writing on the wall. In my company, they were bringing in a lot of younger people with master's degrees. And in the sales world, you're only as good as your last sale. So, forget history, forget how well you're doing. And I saw the writing on the wall that eventually they were trying to make the company more lean so that they could, join business. Actually, they're joint now. The Kraft and Cadbury have joined businesses, so they made themselves lean, and I saw it coming. So I said to the wife, I've got to do what I like. I got to do what I love, because if I sit in a cube any longer, I'm just gonna, kill myself.
Explode.
Yeah.
Right.
So I took the leap of faith in August 2009.
August 2009.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how did you decide that you wanted to move from Manhattan to New Rochelle with that newfound vision?
Well, that's an easy one. It costs and as you might know, you well know, it costs so much more to do business in Manhattan.
Right.
The cost of goods, the cost of anything just to start are way beyond, compare. So you have to find either a small town or a city that's going to allow you to come in and embrace the community and start your business and create your brand. And, I reside in New Rochelle, and it's a community that, the arts are dispersed. They're in little pods within like the 77,000 people. They're there, but you have to find them, and you have to create your own niche, and you have to cultivate that audience that you want, and that's what I've done so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So 2009, you're in Manhattan. You're in corporate world. You decide this is it. I need to follow my passion, and my passion is in the arts. Were you thinking about producing and or presenting at that point?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've thought that since high school and college. I did fashion shows.
So it went even further
It was
back,
further back
than the cubicle.
You had said, I thought last 10, 15 years.
Okay.
But no, in high school and college, I produced plays. I was in plays. I was an actor, and then I modeled a lot, and we did a lot of fashion shows.
Okay.
And I was always the presenter. I always wanted to be behind the scene.
Right.
And the joy of it, there was no money, but the joy is just seeing people happy. So the look on people's faces in the audience is when someone was walking down the lane, or when someone was on stage, or there's a comic, or there's a musician who just played Coltrane like to the ninth degree.
Right.
That made me happy, and seeing that charged me. So
Isn't that
wasn't
the
dollar.
best? Right. Isn't that the best feeling in the world? I know as a producer also, seeing people's faces light up, when they experience whatever that art form is and what that artist is bringing to them is just the most satisfying and wonderful thing. So I feel you when you're talking about that.
Yeah.
But now, see, you let the cat out of the bag.
What
you
cat?
know, that this went back to high school or even before.
Oh, yeah.
And isn't it funny that, as children, we're exposed to art, we draw, we dance, we sing, and somewhere along the line, you move away from that. And you move away because either your parents tell you that you should be in a different line of business,
Right.
or you think, okay, as a career, I should be looking at something else and not necessarily at the arts.
Right.
But you were there, you left it, but you came back.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think a lot of people come back, especially like us.
Right.
They get tangled into what you have to do to survive.
Right.
And then you say, wow, life is short, time is precious. And you know what? I want to enjoy this quarter of my life.
That's right.
And then you say, hey, this is what I'm passionate about. I'm going to make it happen. And it's the concentration that happens after that that is, you're unstoppable after that point. I mean, between the two of us, we probably have over 100 productions.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. All shapes, sizes, yeah, that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
So now, in 2009, is that when you formed your company, Incoming Tide Entertainment?
I was going to speak in third person, but yeah. We. Yeah, I formed it in 2009.
Okay.
And Incoming Tide Entertainment is really a fishing term in my head. We all fish in my group of guys during our mancations, and we're on the Atlantic Ocean fishing. And I said, I'm starting this company, but I don't know what to call it.
Okay.
So Incoming Tide to a fisherman is when the tide rises and it ruffles up all the bottom of the ocean, and then you never know what's going to come up from it. So the bigger fish come in to prey on the little fish. Hate to put it like that, but in terms of how it correlates back to me, I look for opportunities in all the art forms, and within the art form, different mediums, and I try to put it all together into a show so that the public can access it. The New Rochelle community, the New York City community can access it and say, wow, that's a great production.
Okay.
And, give us more, give us more. So I would say the premise was, creating lifestyle entertainment. Yeah.
Okay, that's key right there.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk more and go into depth about Incoming Tide. So you're looking for the productions, you're looking for the art that is going to not only speaks to you, but you feel speak to the audience that you're looking to build. So how did you determine what that should be, what they should look like?
That's I grew up listening to jazz, so from Archie Sheff to John Coltrane, Dexter Gordon, and I'm a sax man. I'm crazy about the saxophone, but now I'm crazy about the piano. and my uncle and my aunts and grandparents listened to it all, so I grew up listening to jazz. So there wasn't enough jazz in New Rochelle. In my opinion, there wasn't enough jazz. There wasn't new jazz. It was the same artist, and not to say they aren't great,
right?
But you need a flux of new people coming in, so it changes the minds of that new guest in that seat.
Okay.
And you put a new 23-year-old in the seat, and she says, I don't like jazz. And then all of a sudden, you hip her to something new other than the guys that play all the time.
Okay.
And then you've got a new listener, and you've got a new person in the Incoming Tide, in the pool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So talk then about what was the first production you did in New Rochelle?
Oh gosh, Alvin Clayton, the owner of Alvin and
Alvin
Friends.
and Friends, fantastic restaurant in New Rochelle with great food.
Yeah,
yes.
But I don't know. It's as quiet as it's kept. He's an artist. He's a fantastic artist.
Yes, he is.
His paintings are all over the walls in his restaurant.
Right.
But he and I have been friends for about 25 years. So I said, listen, one of my first productions, I want, before I get into the comedy tour and theater, let's do an art show. Let's do an exhibit. So I put a submission process together, put it out there. 2 people answered, and I knew I had Alvin in my back pocket. He was my staple. And we put this show together in a matter of a month. And we had about 100 people per day come into Media Loft Gallery, which is in New Rochelle on Webster Avenue.
Oh, okay.
And it was a selling show. We did well. And it was also just a great show in terms of quality of work. And then it was an opportunity to see Alvin and I, 2 African-American men, put our heads together and put something together that wasn't just, like throwing paint on the wall. Yeah, I mean, it was a great show.
Okay.
And that was my very first.
So that was a visual arts exhibit. So now we've got Incoming Tide. You started with a visual art exhibit, but it's so much more than that.
Oh gosh, Incoming Tide, anything that comes up from the bottom.
let's talk about some of those things that have come up.
Okay.
Because from what I've seen, you not only do exhibits, but you do theater. So you do drama productions. You do comedy shows. You do music productions and presentations. So talk about your sort of your process in determining, what you're going to tackle, or how things have come to you for you to say, okay, that's what I want to put on the stage, and that's what I want to introduce to my audience.
So before you think I'm like stir crazy, there's two sides to it. So that you have the product side, and you have the service side. So as a service, I manage events. So I'm a project manager, event manager. I ran a food festival, Serendipity Food Festival. I've run walkathons for different organizations. But to build that service business, I had to create a tonnage of small events, which I call satellites. So I have my concerts, I have my theater festivals, I have my public art exhibits, and what that does, it builds the brand, the Incoming Tide brand, within the eye of the consumer here. And then my strategy was to parlay that into the event services. So it works well in terms of the strategy, but I think at one point I'm going to have to either hire people and make one side efficient or both sides equal like 100%.
Right.
Yeah. Because right now it's about the miniature events feeding the larger events.
Okay, so when you talk about those service events, what is it that Incoming Tide can offer to folks who are out there looking for, they want to put an event on?
So let's say a local church. I would approach the local church and say, do you have any fundraisers in 2013? And your fundraisers compared to 2012, 2011, what was your goal? Did you meet your goal? If you didn't meet your goal, how well are you branded within the community or even regionally in the New York State, Connecticut, Pennsylvania area to get your message across? What's the attendance per event of your fundraisers? And so we ask those questions, and then in turn we say, okay, this is what we see that might be the issue or the situation within your organization or your base of people or community or your parishioners, and we find strategies to connect those people to your events or our events to your people to raise funds. That's one example.
All right. So that's fantastic. But you do much more than that, though, in terms of that service arm, in looking at how you can develop property.
Right.
So talk a little bit about that, because that's going to lead into that other side where you're producing
all the satellite shows.
Yes, indeed. So
another service is business development. So under business development, we look for underutilized properties. So if you're a landlord and you have a former bar that's not doing anything, it's just sitting there and it's gutted out, we can come in and create an art gallery from that gutted out bar, that gutted out venue, or maybe it's an old hall, which we have right now. For instance, Trinity St. Paul Church, they have a parish hall. Underutilized. They have a proscenium stage, very nice size stage, maybe 2,500 square feet, including stage and hall. And so we approached the preacher or the priest and the buildings operator and the vestry to say, listen, we can take your 7 events that you did in 2010 or 2011 and increase that to maybe 20, 25 events a year, and that would fund maybe the renovation for the parish hall, or fundraising to enhance your parking lot, or maybe it can get you a new LED screen so people don't have to read hymns off of paper anymore, so you save paper. So there's
a wonderfully mutually beneficial relationship is what you're talking about there.
And it's a community relationship because we're both in New Rochelle.
Now, I have to tell you that Trinity St. Paul has a very special place in my heart, because when we came to New Rochelle just about 5 years ago, it's where my husband and I got married.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So when I saw your events happening there, I was like, yes, that is fantastic, because it's a wonderful space, and what you've done with it, I think, is really tremendous. Because when I went to the concert a couple weekends ago with Brandy Younger concert. Just phenomenal jazz harpist, and so young and vibrant and full of life. She was a delight,
really good.
really a delight to sit and watch and listen to. I was just looking at, how the space had evolved, and the ambiance that you had created there. And then you brought people in and presented some quality, music, and the whole experience was just, yes, this is what is needed in these downtown areas to really help revive
Right.
the whole community and economics. I mean, if you take a look at the numbers, I think that the Westchester Arts Council came out with in terms of how arts impact our economies.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I try to preach that to all the businesses on Huguenot in front
Right.
of the Parish Hall Theater,
Okay.
which we actually call. We even renamed it as part of the branding process.
See, this is what I want to
it's
get
Pack
to.
House Theater.
Right. Okay. So we took a little jump there, and we'll come back to the other. The other property that you worked on, but let's stay with Pack House Theater for a second. You approached the church, and you said, "Here I am. I'm a producer, and you have a space. Go ahead, tell the story for us, please."
It's a little bit simpler than that.
Okay.
I watched a few productions within the hall.
Okay.
They weren't using it as a theater, and I said, okay, this is a great space. This has opportunity to become New Rochelle's anchor for arts and culture.
Okay.
And so a year or two went by because I was working on another project on the waterfront, which I guess we'll talk about later. And the priest and the building's operations manager came to the other property, and I was shocked. I'm like, why are you guys here?
Okay.
It was for the music, of course.
Right.
But later on, it said, wow, why don't you run some projects in our hall? So I said, I've been there. I said, okay, I can revitalize that place. So we went in, and we begged and borrowed from everyone to get lighting. So
Right.
we installed lighting.
Okay.
We installed a sound system. We took the curtain down because the fire department told us to. And
Okay.
we painted, we sanded the stage,
Okay.
stained it. We put a whole new fire alarm system in. We're getting the doors done over. We installed sculptures out in front.
Okay.
We created a gallery within the theater. And so when you enter the front, we have even an entryway gallery of art. We have glasswork by Gina Kingsley up right now.
Okay.
And then all of our marquees from every production that we've done over the last year are now on the wall. So just like when you go into a small box theater or off Broadway theater,
Right.
they have all of their playbills up. Well, we can't call it playbill, but all of our marquees are posted on the
there,
wall. So when you
right.
come in, the first thing that hits you we're in a theater.
That's right.
And now it's not looked at as, we're in a parish hall.
Right. Right. Okay.
And then in a nutshell, what we've done is transform that entire area. So our neighbors are now Modern Restaurant. They've come up to the corner, and they're directly across the street. Our Patisserie has an art gallery within it. And then because of what we're doing, they bought the building next to them, and they've put an art gallery in there. And then there's other artistic folk coming around on the block. So I think next week we're going to create an arts district. I've been calling it the Huguenot Arts District for the past 2 weeks,
Okay.
especially on Facebook. And now all the artists are gravitating towards me, saying we can actually make this an arts district because we don't have a arts district in New Rochelle.
Right.
We're all just in pods all over the town.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody doing their thing. But that's phenomenal then, because you're looking at you starting just a small production house there, a small theater, and what it's going to develop and grow into is going to service so many people and bring so many people to the area.
Right.
That is phenomenal. I congratulate you for that.
Thank you. But one of I would say one of the biggest highlights is that we have now, and this is probably a political thing, but we've now brought the north end of New Rochelle into downtown,
Okay.
into my production. So from opera to classical music to theater to the concerts,
Right.
jazz, rock, and then the art gallery. We installed the art gallery in November.
Okay.
And the amazing amount of people that would probably never come downtown are
Okay.
now coming downtown. And what I see from that is that as the other art studios begin to open, and then the new restaurants like Alvin's and Modern, Gnarly Vine, La Cienega, as they come into the
Right.
downtown area,
Uh-huh.
I think I've done my job in terms of a good business citizen, in terms of driving people to the downtown area. But in a nutshell, we're up to 20, 25 events a year, like I told the vestry of the church.
Okay.
And then we've raised a ton of money for them. So now they can spend monies in other areas
In
of the
other
church.
areas, right.
And then you had mentioned how Arts Wester talked about dollarizing.
Right.
You take that dollar that comes into, the church,
Mm-hmm.
and then that dollar is taken to fix something in the church or the parking lot, or it's given to help someone with a funeral. But then the dollar that comes into that church or into that theater is going out and spending $1 at the restaurant.
At the restaurants.
They're buying
Right.
art at the art gallery.
Right.
They're going to the cafe for croissants in the morning.
That's right.
And it's the repeat business.
And
So we're making a mark.
That's the way to grow. Absolutely. And it's wonderful as I'm listening to you, the integration that you put in place. You're not focusing on just one particular genre. You're doing theater, you're doing opera, you're doing comedy, you're doing music, but at the same time you're bringing the visual art in there. You're bringing the crafts into the mix.
Yes.
So is that intentional, or is that just because an opportunity might present itself, you say, okay, let's bring that in too?
That's the business side.
Okay.
So more people, more sales, more people.
Okay.
Plus, I mean, it's like the Rockefeller painting, word of mouth. It's word of mouth. So if I do a concert and you like jazz, and you'll get that designated jazz person in the audience. But if he doesn't bring friends because his friends don't listen to jazz, then I don't fill the seats.
Right.
So another way to fill the seats is to create other events. So we created an arts and crafts festival, which we do several times a year.
Okay.
So we get numerous vendors in art, ceramicists, potters, jewelry makers. We get painters and photographers come in.
Right.
And what they do, they come into the hall and they take tables, they buy
Right.
tables, and they sell from 8 to 4. And so now you have a different type of person coming into the incoming tide or into the hall or into the theater. And then from that, you have a database.
Okay.
And then you can sell the next production. You can sell the business across the street. Sort of like a...
So they may come for that one item in terms of the visual arts, but then they're going to experience some opera or some drama, or
especially if the content's good.
Right.
If they come in and the quality or the content of what you're producing is bad, then it's like a bad apple. That
Okay.
one bad apple.
Okay.
They'll go back to Austin and ruin it for you.
Before we run out of time, let's talk a little bit about the type of productions that you have, so that folks know what they can expect.
Okay. Well, theater, we do a lot of short play theater festivals. So
Okay.
the next one coming up is Appetizers. That's one of our products. So it's a body of 10 to 20-minute short plays about food.
Okay.
And in the submission process, you have to write. It has to be indirectly or directly about food. And it usually ends up being comedy for 2 hours.
Okay.
But it's hilarious. And this time we're opening up to students, and that's on January 19th.
Okay.
We're bringing back the Spare Change Comedy Tour, which is another product. And we traveled all around Westchester and in the city
Okay.
with, I think we had 15 comedians in the pool.
Right.
So we're going to start that back on January 5th.
Okay.
And then another theater event is the Black is the New Black Theater Festival. So it's all black playwrights with whatever theme they want to write about, and we put that on stage.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now talk about Wyldcliffe.
Okay.
Because we jumped ahead to the Pack House Theater, but Wyldcliffe is something that you had started even prior to that.
Yeah, prior to that, we were looking for venues, and we're always looking for underutilized venues. And if you have the right content and you can get into that venue, they'll accept you. But we found a waterfront venue, and it was desolate, and there's a building on it which is gutted out. But we said, you know what? We go up to the Berkshires a lot, so you go to Tanglewood and you sit on the grass, listen to music open air.
Right.
You go to Jacob's Pillow and you watch dancers in open air. I said, why can't New Rochelle have open air events?
Right.
So at Wyldcliffe, they have a stage which hadn't been used in 7 years.
Wow.
So we sanded the stage, we painted it, seems to be wherever I go. And then we added a public art exhibit of sculptures. We have over 40 sculptures on display throughout the summer.
That's right.
And then we stage it or program it with theater and concerts. We tried comedy. Comedy outdoors is different. So the theater and the concerts work really
work
well
well.
in the
Okay.
arts and crafts festivals.
Right. And that sounds like something that all the families can come. The kids will have a great time. It's outdoors. You've got great music. You've got the sculpture garden.
Yeah.
It sounds like a really fun afternoon for
Well,
everybody.
it's a grassy knoll, and it's an acre and a half.
Wow.
And it sits
Okay.
right on the Long Island Sound. So,
Okay.
so people
When
come-
does that happen? So folks
that
know.
starts May 1st.
May 1st.
And
And
we do-
runs.
Through September 30th.
Okay.
Yeah, and we do yoga every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock.
Okay.
And that's really good. We do Tai Chi after yoga.
Okay.
And then people come there just to meditate. because we're literally right on the water. We're on the cliff there.
Right, how
And people
beautiful.
meditate, they eat. I think this summer we tried to bring in a cafe experience. That was pretty tough. So now we're going to do sort of like a nosh pit. So it's all open air grilled foods like you see in Spain or even Miami or Cuba, where they're cooking right on the water. So
Okay.
from ribs to whole fish.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're going to add that this
Okay,
year.
so they've got all the events at Wyldcliffe coming up next year, and then you have Pack House Theater at Trinity St. Paul,
Right.
right downtown New Rochelle on Huguenot Street.
Huguenot.
And you mentioned some of the events that will be coming up there in January. If folks, because I'm sure they couldn't write fast enough with all of the things that you are involved in, if they want more information, where can they go to find out about your events?
The easiest place to go is to the website. So it's incomingtideentertainment.com. And you can hit me on my Facebook page. I'll friend everybody. And also we have a fan page on Facebook, Incoming Tide Entertainment. And we're also on Twitter at Incoming Tide. So those are 3 avenues.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. You know, it has been such a privilege to talk to you, Eric. I admire what you're doing. I admire the spirit and the passion that you are bringing to New Rochelle in terms of the arts and culture, and how you are pulling, people together, whether they be artists or the people who just enjoy the arts, to that downtown area and making it such a success. I wish
Thank
you
you.
all the best
Thank you very
with
much.
everything you do, and
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
So this has been Avitar Face to Face. We hope you enjoyed our show and you'll join us the next time around. And as Dillard would say in leaving, a dream is in the mind of the believer and in the hand of the doer. And you are not given a dream unless you're given the power to make it happen. It has been a privilege to join with you today to talk about arts and culture in Westchester. We hope you have a safe and very happy holiday season, and we look forward to welcoming you again in the new year. My name is Jewel Kinch-Thomas, and I look forward to seeing you the next time around on Avitar Face to Face.